So we continue on today with our Holy Hogwarts series, and today we are talking about Gryffindor. And if you know none of the other houses, probably the one that you know or have heard of is Gryffindor. It's the one that the main characters are from, and I really think I kind of want to label it as the one that's the golden child. They're the ones that dive into action, that make the bold moves, that save the day. They have the bravery and the determination and the boldness. To mix my metaphors a bit, think Captain America, think Thor, think Black Panther. For those of you who are more history buffs, think George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt. These are all people who fit that type of characteristic, who value that type of virtue. Now, spoiler alert, the hero of the story, Harry Potter, is from Gryffindor. And so he has these two other friends that he runs around with, Hermione and Ron, and they do all of their adventures together, and they grow up together, and you watch them through all of these ages move together, and they exhibit bravery at about every turn. And there's this great scene in the first book, and Hermione's upset, and she runs to the bathroom to cry, because that's where we go to cry, right, ladies? Or men. I mean, I'm not gonna, let you think about that. But so Hermione runs to the bathroom, she's upset, and the students find out there is a troll loose in the school. So Ron and Harry have a change of heart, decide they need to go after Hermione. They go find her in the bathroom to warn her, and what they realize is that the troll is in the bathroom. And there's a great line that the author writes. She says, Harry then did something that was both very brave and very stupid. He took a great running leap and managed to fasten his arms around the troll's neck from behind. Also, spoiler alert, he did take the troll down. But bravery, it has to do with facing something with fear, of something that has difficulty, something that has danger. It's not just strength. It's not just leadership skills. It's not just being headstrong. It's coming against something, meeting a challenge head on. And today we're going to talk about the bravery of God, and we're going to talk about it in regards to God's relationship with humanity. Now, theologically speaking, it feels a bit difficult to say God took a risk on humanity, as if a relationship with humanity makes God nervous, but quite the contrary. I think we don't always have to feel the fear to risk and to show bravery. Let's explore this for just a minute. We're in the book of Jeremiah this morning. Jeremiah was a prophet, was a bullfrog, but also a prophet. And so, I couldn't resist, I'm sorry. Oh, so Jeremiah, if you look at chapter 30, that starts this 2-chapter section, and he gets these instructions from God, and God says, write these out in a book. And so we get this 2-chapter book of God's instructions. And so chapter 31 comes in. This is where we are today. It is the single most important teaching in Jeremiah. It is the climax of all of his writing. It is one of the mountain peaks of the Old Testament. It is an important text in the New Testament and begins to create a distinction between the Old Testament and the New Testament. It begins to refer to 2 separate covenants. The first covenant, if you'll remember, was created at Sinai. God and Moses had a conversation. Think 10 Commandments, Charlton Heston, right? God gave out the moral law. These are the rules to follow, the rules to obey. Very specific black and white way of living. Here, Jeremiah begins to tell of the creation of a second covenant. And what it does for the people is it creates a change in perspective. Not a change in relationship status, but a change in perspective. You ever heard the phrase DTR? Anybody? Define the relationship, the kids these days, right? Are we friends? Are we dating? Are we like interested but not quite dating? Like we got to define where we're at so we know how to move forward, right? So it's not a change in our relationship status. It's a change in how we view God. It is a difference between perfect obedience and being a perfect relationship partner. And there is a vast chasm between the two. Let me give you an illustration. I think, age notwithstanding, it is easier to stand and lecture 1,000 students. I know some of y'all got stage fright, but hold off with me for a second. To stand and lecture 1,000 students from a seat of authority, to say, I have all of the answers, here you go and follow, versus sitting on the floor with 2 preschoolers and allowing for that cooperative guidance. They have this Montessori school of learning, let the child lead, create an environment that helps be conducive to the style of learning and the natural bent of curiosity that the child has. It is the difference between the thumb of oppression and the outstretched hand designed to lift. So what is the result of allowing an imperfect creation partner with God? Pain and suffering. A little bit of a dark twist for us this morning. You see, God leads, but we don't always listen. And not all of us ever listen. It's a great illustration. This week I had a phone call I needed to make. And I wasn't real happy when I made it. Hard to believe, I know. And I really wanted to be aggressive when I spoke on the phone, and I really wanted to speak my mind. But I knew it wasn't going to get me anywhere. And so I chose to use kindness in my voice. But I got to tell you, it was still all about me. It wasn't about how the other person was going to feel. It was about, could I get the results that I needed by the way in which I spoke to this individual? You see, we cause all kinds of challenges in our relationships with other people. And I think through some of these different things. Have you ever sought out revenge? Have you ever claimed fairness? They deserve to be treated this way. Have you ever thought about a half-truth? Stubborn selfishness? Responding to someone out of anger? Or just punishing them with our silence? And unfortunately, in all of creation and all of humanity, when we start to look at the bigger picture, the global picture, we look at the greater damage that is caused by our inability to do things perfectly. Great example these past couple of weeks, stubborn selfishness, guys, both sides of the aisle. We got hundreds of thousands of people without work, and we have millions of people being affected by their health and their safety because of this shutdown. When fear villainizes other people and people groups, when greed causes prices to rise and wages to be cut, when anger lashes out into lethal violence or addiction takes over the life of a teen, or when our ego turns into some sort of an arms race, these tiny infractions that don't feel so great, all of a sudden work up into these bigger and larger and greater things. Guys, this suffering is a result of humanity. It's not God. As a result of our imperfection. We are so very intent on reminding ourselves of our imperfection. We are so intent on declaring ourselves unworthy or undeserving of love or of grace or of mercy. We get blinded by this list of transgressions that all we begin to see is our faults. But I believe that when God looks at us, what God sees is our potential. You see, in the beginning, when God created humanity, God said that man was good, not perfect. There is a vast difference between those two, but God said you are inherently good. And God has been trying to convince us of that ever since. And so what we hear in Jeremiah 31 is God calling us to be a covenant partner. Us, of all people, God calls us to be a covenant partner to prove to us of our worthiness. He says, I will be their God and they will be my people. God chooses to work with an imperfect creation to heal the suffering of the world. which is brave by our standards. I mean, who of us would choose that? If we have the choice between control and cooperation, between thumbing people down with oppression and lifting them up to help, which do we often choose? Feels a bit gutsy. We don't really understand the logic because we see the result, but not God. See, love coexists with imperfection. God, who is love, coexists with imperfection. God knew the likelihood of the suffering that we would instigate. And God pulled up a chair, not with popcorn to watch the drama, but God pulled up a chair at the table to strategize with us. God seeks to counteract the pain of the world by expressing love to and through the very creation that is imperfect. And God is hoping that at the very least, we can stop adding to the pain. And that at the very best, we can heal the wounds through love. And here's the thing. Even if we aren't successful, God's not walking away. I had Jesse read on to the end there, verse 37. And essentially what God is saying is if all of a sudden the skies above, where we have the stars that are too numerous to count, if all of a sudden we can measure that with a yardstick, if all of a sudden we can explore the earth all the way down to its core, then at that point I'll give up on the earth. It's God's way of saying it ain't going to happen. It is an impossibility to be had. In ancient maps, there is a myth that at the borders of the map, there was a phrase that said, "Here be dragons." Now, obviously, there were no Google Maps. There were no Google cars driving around, mapping things out, taking satellite pictures, right? We have no precise tools of measurement from that time. And the ancient maps weren't designed to be the exact replicas that we have today. There was uncharted territory. There was unknown terrain. They were incomplete, just the nature of the beast. And yet they were still beautiful in their estimation of the world. And so on the edges of the map, there's a folklore that says, I think there's only one actual globe that this has it on it, but there's these words that says, "Here be dragons." It was a reminder of the unknown, that out there, we don't know what's there. For all we know, there's dragons in this unknown spot. It was a reminder of the risk and a reminder of the bravery necessary to go into that uncharted territory. And today I want to remind us that God made a brave and daring move to explore the outer edges of humanity, to explore the imperfection of humanity, to sit with the source of the suffering of others, and to partner with us to say, hey, you're not perfect, but you're good. And to see our potential and to work alongside humanity to bring healing to all of the world. May it be so for all of us. Amen.